Hello friends, today we're going to change the oil in my 6th generation Mitsubishi Mirage without any tools, not even a jack. This is made possible by the Dorman twist drain valve that I installed in a previous video. I'll provide a link below in case you missed that video. To start off, let's check the dipstick to see if our valve has been leaking. I haven't noticed any oil where I park, so I'm not anticipating any surprises. As we can see here, we're just above the halfway mark between the low and high holes. Given that it's been about 9 months and just over 3,000 kilometers since our last oil change, this loss of oil can probably be attributed to regular oil consumption. The vehicle is still on the ground here. Let's begin by checking how our valve is holding up. The corrosion around the hex-shaped part of the valve may have been caused by the paint being scratched during installation, and the corrosion you see around the flat part of the valve, which makes contact with the oil pan, is likely due to road debris scratching at the paint, exposing the bare metal to the elements, allowing it to rust. There's also this residue stuck to the bottom of the silver part of the valve. This may have been caused by the residual oil from the previous oil change, or this valve may have an incredibly slow leak that's causing this. Here is my oil drain pan. I've also got one of these test kits that we're going to be filling up with oil today to send to the lab. To open the valve, we're going to push it in towards the car and then twist. After the oil has flowed for a couple of seconds, we're going to grab my oil sample. This part of the video is being sped up, but it took around 4 minutes for all the oil to drain out. If I was in a big rush, I would have opened up the oil fill cap to allow air into the system. I would have warmed the car up a little longer to make the oil a little bit thinner and more runny. Normally you would close the valve before moving the oil drain pan, but since I want to give you guys a close-up look as to how it looks like while open, I'm going to leave it open. Here's a close-up of what it currently looks like. The black part that was protected by the silver thing on top was perfectly preserved. No noticeable damage or issues. One thing I did notice is that there's a little bit of a gritty feeling as you push the silver cap in and those pins run along that track, but it does go away after a couple of pushes. I also just now remembered how little force is required to open this valve. It gives me nightmares. Now we're done draining the oil, let's go ahead and find our oil filter. So the filter is just below this intake manifold and behind this coolant hose. Here with my left hand you can see me grabbing it. Mine's black, but yours may be any color. Don't forget to put the oil drain pan underneath where the filter is for all the oil that's trapped in the filter to drain out. For reasons you'll learn later in the video, your oil drain pan should be further back than what you're seeing here. View from underneath has the oil drain pan. Above it, the black thing is a skid plate for the starter motor, and above that is my black oil filter and a little spout to guide the oil. I wasn't able to remove this oil filter by hand, so I'm going to be using this pair of oil filter pliers to help me out. If you also intend on using oil filter pliers, be sure not to damage the wires shown on the bottom right here. These go to the oil pressure sensor. If you try to use pliers and you're still unable to remove the filter, I highly recommend you do not start the car, as the pliers may have punctured the filter, and when the oil system is pressurized, all your oil may be lost. Unfortunately, I ended up making a bit of a mess because a lot of the oil ran inside of the starter motor skid plate and was sent behind my oil drain pan. When opening a new bottle of oil, remember not to push the metal tamper seal into the bottle, as it'll be very hard to fish out. As directed by the oil filter instructions, we're going to get a little bit of oil on our index finger here, and we're going to rub it around the gasket on the filter. Some expensive filters come pre-lubricated. If yours has saran wrap on it, it may be pre-lubricated. You may not need to do this. Now we're just going to wipe down the mating surface with this piece of paper towel here. This outer ring is what the filter gasket sits on. I'm just going to run my finger around it. Now is also a great time to check to make sure that another gasket isn't stuck here, as sometimes the old filter gasket may remain attached and you'll end up with a double gasket situation. All your oil will leak out. Now let's install our new oil filter. Once I get it going, I'm going to spin it with just one finger until the gasket makes contact with the engine, and then we're going to give it about 3/4 to 1 whole turn. Right about here I can feel the resistance of the gasket making contact with the engine. So now, using this label for reference, we're going to try and spin it about 3/4 to 1 full turn. I'm going to use a bit of paper towel to give me a better grip, as this is an awkward position. Also remember that when installing an oil filter, you should not use tools, especially not something like oil filter pliers, which will likely puncture the filter. Based on the position of the gray part of the sticker, I can tell that we've turned this approximately 3/4 of a revolution, and I am satisfied that the filter is now on securely. I wanted to show you guys how awkward holding the filter is, so I take my left hand, I put it in front of the alternator, underneath the coolant hose, and that's how I reach the filter. It's a very awkward position. Now we're going to clean up our starter motor skid plate and the spout thing below the filter. We're just doing this because if you don't do it and you park the car, this oil will slowly drip onto the ground and will make people nervous, including me, that the car may be leaking oil. Now we're going to refill the engine with about 3.25 liters of oil. If you're wondering why I'm using this tiny ass measuring cup, it's not because it's some sort of great idea, it's because it's the only measuring cup I own. Now for the moment of truth, we're going to start her up. For anyone curious about why I don't pre-fill oil filters, here's my reasoning. Based on the video, I've calculated that the low oil pressure light was on for only 5 seconds. This amount of time doesn't bother me, especially considering that the car was operated just prior to the oil change, which would have ensured that everything was adequately lubricated. To answer people's questions about the size of the valve, which is the most popular question on my installation video, here's a look at it from the bottom. It's definitely the lowest part of the vehicle, and here's me pressing my phone against the bottom of the front bumper, and you can see without a doubt it's the lowest point. For those wondering why the valve hasn't yet been ripped off my car, the answer is simple. If we view the valve from the driver's side wheel facing the passenger wheel, we can see that the valve is positioned near the center line of our tires. This positioning ensures that any flat obstacle, such as a speed bump, will not come into contact with the valve, unless the obstacle is being traversed by only one front wheel. Thank you for watching. Please leave any questions, comments, or concerns down below.